this is the highlight of the day, the best panel that we have, the best panel group, obviously. So what we're going to be talking about today, so obviously cord cutting is a thing. Service providers are under pressure from the proliferation of streaming services and streaming devices. And anyone with a set-top box, any service provider, is facing a great many challenges in respect to the ensuring a sort of TV-grade quality of experience that viewers are used to through traditional broadcast. And also dealing with the sort of multitude of technical complexities of delivering over a network which may or may not be entirely owned by that service provider. So in this panel, we're going to hear from quite a array of perspectives on how service providers are addressing this sort of quality of experience challenge, how they're measuring it for it, how they're optimizing for it. So with that, I want to introduce my panel. So on my right, I have George Miguel, who is Director of TV Engineering and Operations at Mayo, under the Altice umbrella, and formerly part of Portugal Telecom until a few years ago. At the end, we have Paulo Miguel Fernandes, who's Head of Television Operations for Mayo. We have Miguel Rosario, who is Head of Back-End Services Engineering at Mayo. And then on my left, we have Gavin Sheldon, who is SVP and Head of Communications, Media and Entertainment Platforms at Infosys. A relatively recent addition to Infosys. Until for the last 8 years, you were Managing Director at Liberty Global.
That's right, yeah. It was a big change in the operating model of the team. We moved across with the team and the platforms around 8 months ago.
Yeah. So I felt under pressure to be Will Miguel for this panel, but Gavin, you're not a Gavin Miguel.
Not that I'm aware of.
No, okay, all right. You may have noticed the sort of Anglo-Portuguese slant to this session, and I found a piece of trivia the other day.
You stayed right in the middle.
Yes, I did. Well, so I was doing some research on this. Apparently, the Anglo-Portuguese alliance is the oldest alliance still active today, 650 years old.
We've heard that in school again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't want to do anything to ruin a 650-year-old peace alliance. So we're all going to be very polite to each other in this session. So kicking things off, first question, as I said earlier, competition between service providers and sort of pure play streaming services is fiercer than ever. What is the winning formula for service providers? Is there a winning formula for service providers? George Miguel, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I don't know the winning formula. So I think today we try to live together. For us as an operator, so we come from the network side, and then television was a service that we introduced already as an aggregation because we had broadcast channels and we aggregated a bigger set of channels, and now the path is still aggregating. So we are still aggregating content to present to our customers. But above all, what I think is the basis of the winning formula, not the winning formula itself, but the basis is to provide an excellent quality of service in terms of network and the service that we deliver to the customers. And so far, I think that has been one of the biggest parts of that formula. Just saying a sentence from our CEO actually. She says that a customer may leave because of the price and may return, but the customer that leaves because of the quality is unlikely to return. So quality of services is one of the biggest parts of that formula. Of course, that we continue to try to aggregate content to present to the customers, and aggregating content is not just from linear channels, it's from streaming services and other types of content producers. So I think that's also part of that winning formula. Having a one-stop shop for the customer instead of having several subscriptions around the market. Also, being in a small market like Portuguese one, so 10 million people, is also, it's bad from one perspective, but it's good from the other because it doesn't have the scale that makes the market attractive enough for a big competition in terms of the streaming services there. However, well, they are all over the place, so we need to live with them and try to bring them on to our ecosystem, let's say.
Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
I completely agree with the quality comment. I think that's the foundation. If you don't get the quality of delivery right, then you lose the customer very rapidly. I think we have to also make content much more discoverable. And you heard that in the last panel, there's a huge focus on discoverability, personalisation. We know from our experience in the multi markets that customers feel very snowblind. There's a vast, massive content out there, but finding the right thing to watch at the right time is actually not that straightforward. So I think in addition to quality, discoverability is absolutely key. And I think also the flexible billing. I know it might not be necessarily a sexy thing to say, but I personally believe, and certainly a view held by Altice markets, is it will fragment and consolidate further. So some streamers will go away, some OTT players will go away, there will be some consolidation, but there will also be some fragmentation, and in that space, the operator has a great opportunity to offer add-on, switch on, switch off billing, mini packages, microservices challenge, and I think whoever gets that right, I think has got a real good chance of keeping customers. But quality is the foundation.
And you raised an interesting point there. There's a lot of different touch points that the user has on the service, and there's more than just what they're watching, how they find the content, how they get to that content, how they even pay for that content. So it sort of segues nicely into sort of my second question, really, which is what aspects of a user's journey on your platform are kind of most interesting for you? What do you prioritize sort of measuring and analysing from a user perspective?
Well, it's probably a slightly cop-out answer, but the answer is all of it. And we measure it all because there are moments of truth all throughout the journey, from advertising to a customer and then being a potential customer to coming on board as a customer, to taking additional packages, being able to serve in live and deal with any quality issues that you get. They're all really important. So we really think it's important to have a 360-degree view of the customer through the life cycle, from kind of get to in life. And to your point, that's not just across the set-top box. Our platform offers to app, it offers to third-party platform, on-net, off-net, and the set-top box as well. So the job is quite challenging because you're trying to measure the full life cycle across multiple network types and multiple touch points. And then from that, try and pull out a single view of the customer. So there's a huge challenge in pulling together the vast amount of data we've got, but deriving meaning from it. I personally think that a lot of operators are very data-rich but insightful, and that's because they don't do enough to kind of aggregate across the data sources we've got. And that includes things like in-home Wi-Fi. So we talk a lot about the platform and also about the broadband networks, and that's no good if you've got really bad in-home Wi-Fi. What we found in Liberty's networks is you can deliver a great platform, very stable, you can have solid broadband, but if the distribution in home is poor, the thing is poor, and customers don't differentiate. So you've got to be able to measure a very broad spectrum of things, but you've got to derive meaning from it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm working this up to the mayor perspective.
Yes, as a traditional telco, I think we have a special challenge because we have a very wide range of users. We have users from 5 years old to 100 years old. And I think measuring these user journeys are completely different. So for instance, if we have the young users, of course, they're more focused on on-demand, And the main focus here is content discovery, of course. I see for my 8-year-old daughter, if she takes more than 3 or 5 clicks to get to the right content, she's at the edge of a nervous breakdown. So, and especially in a classical remote where you don't have something to swipe. And of course, to address that, of course, we have a jackpot of AI personalization. But in the other hand, when we're talking about older users, it's almost if we have a completely different service, because they're much more focused on linear. Even today, if we look global to our service, about 70 to 80% is still linear consumption, linear channels. And about 40% of our daily users don't even get to the menu. So they just jump to the linear channel. So all those fancy recommendations that we've made, they're completely useless because they don't even get there. And when we see Netflix and other services, we only have that single point of entry where we have all the recommendations. For older users, we don't have that. So it's a completely different experience, completely different needs. And we've been addressing trying to address some new technologies for that users, for instance, voice and integration with digital assistants. And it's been an intense debate here in Mel if older users can actually use these new technologies, if they are relevant for them. But I have to say I was a bit skeptical till I see my 90-year-old grandparents using Android TV and the Google Assistant, and most of all they use it. That was the main use, was the voice to change the linear channel. Right? So this actually works, and it's a bit frustrating when we're trying to understand the user journeys when we have two completely different needs, completely different journeys. It's almost if we have completely services in just one, so I think it's the main challenge for us.
Obviously, Mayo has gone through this 20-year journey from IPTV to a much broader streaming proposition. So your footprint is much broader now. The set-top box is a very kind of controlled environment. We were talking about this earlier. It gives you the ability to optimize. All the levers are yours, essentially. So how has this sort of fragmentation of the device ecosystem affected your approach to user experience?
So just to give a bit of ancient history, so we had an IPTV platform, and about in 2021 we started deploying by default an OTT service based on Android TV set-top boxes, our own set-top boxes as well with partners, and that was quite a disruption in what we had. So we had a very stable platform. Basically, we had 100% uptime, almost, I think, which was a dream for an operator. And then we changed to an OTT system that has, it's not just the set-top box, it has a lot of pieces around. I think more than 40 that we counted on to keep everything working at the basic. So it's a very different ecosystem, and when we are ramping up at 2,000 customers a day, it was quite a pain. So Paulo there can describe the kind of symptoms and pains that we had for almost 2 years. But the point is that we managed to control this ecosystem, mainly because of two things. Because we have the control of the set-top box, so we have the complete ecosystem from end to end, and that helped us to understand what's happening all over. Of course, the experience we had before, because we have OTT since 2010, and that gives us a bit of some expertise in addressing those the pains. But controlling the whole ecosystem and having the set-top box included in that ecosystem is very important. Of course, that another thing that helped us a lot is the observability. So we have information, we have data from the set-top box, from the user perspective, and we have data from the back-end perspective. And bringing both together was key for optimizing and having the service working as we wanted, with the quality that we wanted, or we are trying to reach. Let's not assume that we are already there. So that those two parts, controlling the whole ecosystem and having observability from both ends, was very important. So I think Paulo can develop a lot more on that, because on a daily basis they have to look into that and to address that. But I think those were two important parts of this equation.
Yeah. So how do you activate? You've got a lot of data. So how do you kind of activate that? How do you make that actionable for optimizing that experience? And I'm also curious, how do you kind of gauge the actual impact on how many users are impacted by something? What's the
Yes, for sure. That data that we collect from the application, the service, and the set-top box and the network all the way, it is the data that provides us the information from where we should or not touch or tweak the service in order to provide a quality of experience or service to the user. OTT, we started recently with our service, and Miguel was saying, moving from a well-established and stable platform to a new one. Data is what is the principal factor that we can rely to improve the service. Obviously, we have the advantage of controlling all the network, but our service competes with this single service is an OTT service. It competes with other services, so we don't have the other advantage than the data that you can collect and correlate along the network.
And actually, we use it a lot, not just in terms of evaluating the experience, but also in terms of operations, where we have a lot of analytics, depending on the data that we gather from the government, from the backend. So everything is now based on data, because before 2019, more or less, we depended a lot on the customer voice, which is very, very complicated to address, because people tend to exaggerate some things and overlook others. So with data, we know we have the truth, basically. So we can look into, okay, you have startup failure, you have video playback failure, you have stuff happens. So as Ken said, Wi-Fi, for example, was a huge challenge that we had with our partners, because OTT is basically seen as a Wi-Fi kind of based service. So you get the set-top box everywhere, you have power. And it's highly dependent on the quality of Wi-Fi, and it's not that good to have. No, it's not just because of the Wi-Fi of the devices, it's because of the coverage inside wherever people have their device. Because everyone thinks you can put a set-top box in a very remote part of the house and everything works. It doesn't. And the first
the Wi-Fi routers in the kitchen and the
yeah,
boxes in the loft.
It's very complicated, and explaining that to a customer that has bought something based on that, it's very complicated. So it's a lot to work on.
I think to build on that, I think for us it was, we did in IPTV for Altice markets for many, many years. It's a hybrid model, but then when you go full IP, actually what we found is that the top 5 KPIs that used to be the ones that we tracked, we had to throw away and a new top 5 KPIs came in. And that was actually a bit of an adjustment. You know, so the things we cared about in a cloud world and the things we care about in an IP world, quite different actually. And what we experienced as well is some things we didn't see in the data at a lower scale, and as soon as you get to a higher scale, you see different patterns. So I think it is about data and observability, but it's also about using stress testing, scale testing and the data to see things that happen when you go out to millions of customers that you don't see when you do a 30,000 person trial.
That's interesting.
And also there's some blind spots, right? I mean, in an OTT world, I don't get as much telemetry from Netflix, Paramount, Amazon as I would like. So in an IP world, we have to do a lot of inferring what's happening. We can see some things, not others. So we do a lot of inference from multiple data points to try and understand what's actually happening.
Well, let me hold that thought on the third parties, because that's a point I want to come back to. You raised an interesting point though about the sort of 5 key KPIs that you dropped and 5 new ones that came in to take its place. Could you give maybe just an example of one you dropped and one you?
I mean, what the key KPI that we measure on the platform that we do Observability and available to other customers now on IP is buffer KPIs, and they just weren't relevant in a cloud context, right? So everybody in the limited business and in emphasis is kind of obsessed with the percentage of customers who experience a buffering event and the percentage of customers who experience a buffering error. The two are different because it depends on the buffer length, of course. And what those KPIs did is force some really interesting conversations around the trade-off between how much of a buffer size you have to avoid seeing an error and latency on live events. We've talked quite a lot about linear TV. So you've always got a bit of a trade-off between the customer experience and what you're trying to solve for. And it might seem very obvious now, and certainly to this audience, but go back sort of 3-4 years when we were pushing the IP-TV product out there, and this was all new language for us. Climb errors were climb errors, but all of a sudden having to explain well, you could have less errors on the set-top box for the customer, or you could have a slightly longer buffer, which means that next door might hear the goal being scored before you being scored. All of that was very new. And to a certain extent, it still takes time to educate the wider business on how you measure the service and how you optimize the service in the IP world, because it's very different.
Yeah. Well, the latency one's definitely interesting. I co-chair a working group on latency, and that one is, we definitely haven't solved that one.
No, absolutely.
I think one of the other points you raised, which is probably it's quite an interesting one, is things can look good in the lab, or even on a limited sort of beta rollout, and they only become apparent at scale.
Absolutely.
So having that kind of full census measurement, like literally looking at every user, every session is critical.
And it also informs what you measure, because what we found is we didn't see some issues in the lab environment at a pretty significant scale. Hundreds of thousands of users, along with up to the millions we did. So actually we found out that we've already got a very comprehensive panel of data being measured, and so actually we're missing some markers here and here. And unfortunately we only learned that when we got to millions of subscribers, and we had the first Grand Prix event of the season, and we had some operational challenges because we didn't see a pattern in the millions of users ramping up very quickly that we saw when we did a kind of happy path ramp in the lab in test. So the user behaviour also can significantly impact the IP experience in a more meaningful way, I think, perhaps it would on traditional distribution.
Question for Nego. I mean, despite all of these challenges that you flagged of sort of moving from traditional IPTV to OTT, your streaming performance index, the KPI that sort of measures holistic experience, is 98 out of 100, which is world class. It is literally one of the best on the planet. So you've obviously, congratulations to you for that. You must be very proud.
Yeah, we are much older now.
Because of that. I mean, this
Yeah.
I mean, this suggests that you can achieve a TV grade viewing experience through streaming on a set-top box in a way that isn't necessarily possible on third parties. Is it sort of reasonable for viewers to expect a higher quality of experience through service providers than through pure play streaming providers?
Great question. Yeah. Well, it's difficult to answer that because so the answer should be yes. So we should be able to deliver a better service rather than any other because we are on top of our network. Okay? So it's not that we have a different kind of service. It's because we have data that we can use to provide a better service. So the answer is should be yes. Of course, the information we have from the backend from the set-top box, well, it's anyone can have it for their own services. But if we add that to the network, it should be better than any other. But for example, Gavin was mentioning the kind of KPIs. For example, we learned a lot going back to the Wi-Fi and for live events and for the user behavior. A football match is the worst part of a football match is the break. And at the end, because everyone changes channel. And that at the same time, yes.
We get to half time in the football in an operations role. All the metrics suddenly start changing.
Yes.
Quite easy to start panicking.
Yes, we do. At the beginning we did, and had an impact for. It was not only on that moment, but for 15-20 minutes, the platform backend also starts to rumble. And until it established and re-established the service, it took a while. And then people would try and introducing more commands and more entries on the service. And that part, it still happens, but is not visible for the customer. At a larger scale, there are some functions we know that they are not working, but the customer doesn't take notice of it.
That's why he lost his hair.
But the fact that we have visibility and data all over the network, it provides us the correlations needed to tweak the service and not only the service but the backend, specifically at the backend, to accumulate those kind of events or events on the event.
So in spite of net neutrality, it is still possible for the service providers to make experience a differentiator, a competitive differentiator.
Yeah, for sure, because of that. Our service, our TV or TV service, it runs like the other service that the customer has on the network. So it is the data that differentiates us, as mentioned before, to tweak the service and the underlying platforms that provide the service to accommodate that difference on the quality of experience.
Of course, if we detect an issue on the network, it will please everyone because we will solve the issue for everyone because others will also have that problem. So that's why I say that the answer is not that linear because every time we address the issues of our service in terms of network, we are also addressing the issues of others on top of our network. So it's kind of well, we can't provide a different quality of service. So because it's neutral. Okay.
Neutral-ish.
Yeah. Kind of.
On top of it, our company, the network is the same and provides the service to customer market, to business markets and the consumer market. So it is the same. It is the same network. We cannot change the network to work for the TV service or for the voice over IP or for internet or something like that. So we are an OTT.
Yeah.
We are an OTT also within our company.
Where it does get hard is off-net. So in some of our markets we deal off-net as well, so it's not wholly on network. And in that sense you are less in control. And you still get the grief associated with poor performance. So for us the football thing is true, but also we support Formula 1 on our platforms, and in the Netherlands if Max Verstappen qualifies well, the number of people who watch the Formula 1 racing in the Netherlands is far higher than if he doesn't qualify well. And if he's doing well in the last 5 laps of the Grand Prix, you see a massive ramp on of people wanting to watch the end of the race. What we don't see though is how many people are going off net until we get, and so the whole off-net, on-net dynamic means it is hard, frankly, to deliver a fantastic quality experience in the way that you put in a captive or on-net space. So there's still some things to do there.
So these are some of the headaches that sort of keep you up at night worrying about. When we talk about being a guest on somebody else's platform, somebody else's network, you can either think of it from the sort of device perspective, like being on other people's clients, if you like, or delivering over other people's networks. Is there one of those that gives you kind of greater force for thought, or is it all?
I think they're both pretty challenging, right? And the easiest way to deliver a great quality experience is you've got end-to-end observability. So you need either of those models, it's not just missing information. So I think what I think is really important is using the data you do have and instrumenting where you can even more deeply. And then things like AI, machine learning, I think will play a role in inferring as best you can what's actually happening for the customer. Because you can't necessarily close the gaps in the knowledge, but you can probably make reasonable guesses about what's happening. That's what we're trying to for both of the different off-net zones.
It's funny you mentioned AI. AI is obviously the word of the decade, the century, at the moment. There's a lot of people talking about it. How have you actually been able to sort of leverage it in the real world for something useful?
Yeah, I mean, still early days. I think, if we're being very honest, we're using it to help. I would say more machine learning than AI right now. We use on our big operational data hub, which is where we collect all the data from all of the endpoints, be it network, be it Wi-Fi, be it set-top box. So we use quite a lot of machine learning to derive meaning, the data we've got. We're doing some trials at the minute with AI to try and, as I say, fill in gaps and infer what the user experience looks like for off-net models, although it's pretty nascent. And then we've got some AI use cases embedded in the platform itself, things like search and discoverability that we're in trial. So more conversational search with the set-top box to help find content. But it's still pretty early days, right? I think most people are still finding their way and trying to figure out exactly how this will help for the user. But I think there's a huge opportunity in operation efficiency as well.
Yeah.
I think in the operations space, probably the biggest one for me is you can take away a lot of fault cases and self-heal if we use AI properly with data.
I think the operational use cases.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but for pattern recognition and anomaly detection, it is paramount. It is paramount.
Actually, with all these new technologies emerging, generative AIs and large language models, we might think that we have a clear answer for what to do with data. We could just feed them data and let them do their magic. But actually, we've been experiencing some of these technologies, and what we're seeing is that the more complex these AIs are, and the more capable they are, the more unpredictable are the results. And this is actually a risk. So we're seeing, especially with large language models, we've been experiencing some integration with ChatGPT with our own content, and we've been experiencing some issues that we didn't have in machine learning that we use for almost 8 years, which have predictable results. And we see our product team much more concerned about these risks then the actually benefits that we can take out from them. Because if we were that we use ChatGPT, if something goes wrong, customers will blame us. They won't blame OpenAI for something that went wrong. So it's a challenge. I don't think there's a clear path for what will be the future of AI in the TV operation.
Well, we could fill an entire panel just on AI, I think.
Yes.
but I know we're running out of time. I want to revisit a point that you raised earlier, Gavin, about these third-party services, the Netflixes and the Disney Pluses and Deserves and so on. A very common strategy across all the service providers is to become a kind of super aggregator. Right? And there's all sorts of benefits for the end user in that perspective. But I mean, how does a service provider even choose who they're going to partner with, and then how do they actually gauge whether that's a successful partnership or not? And how much data is actually being shared in these relationships?
Yeah, I mean the choice of OTT providers is fairly straightforward. It's what the customers want to watch in any market, right? And there's the big 5 or 6 that pretty much everybody wants in every market. So you get those on your platform and you're covering for most of the users' needs, and then there's usually a local or geographical adds to that, and then you've pretty much got 10 apps that customers really use and really interact with on a regular basis. So it's largely consumer driven, largely commercially driven. But then as it comes to the data, I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, we're constantly lobbying both commercially and operationally for more insight, to open the black box a little bit more what's happening in the app, so that we can pull that into our big data store and analyse that kind of information alongside everything else. And the argument is always so we can deliver our joint customer a better experience. But to be very honest, some partners give us more, some partners give us less. There is a general nervousness about opening up that black box because maybe there's IP in there, maybe there's sensitive performance data that they don't want their competitors to see. So we do what we can to use the data we've got, we lobby for more, and we try and infer where we don't have the data. But it is a problem, it is a challenge, and I think it would be in everybody's best interest ultimately if some of the big OTT players did open their kimono a little bit more than today.
Studio, the Mayo perspective or super aggregation.
Well, it's in terms of market, I agree 100% with what Gavin said. So it's basically what customers want to see. Regarding the data of those third parties, so in our case we are completely in the dark. So we have some general numbers in terms of market information, but so we don't have the possibility to try to have a proper recommendation regarding, for example, content. If the customer has some specific profile, that we can propose content from our linear channels, from other third parties services. So we are not there. We don't have that kind of information, and I don't think in the near times we'll have that information. So basically, we have to embrace the aggregation in a one-way perspective, because it's what the customers also want to have. But it's for now. It's just that it's very limited in terms of having a good proposition for the customer in terms of overall content proposal.
I think it'll open up. So over the last 3 years, we saw major OTT providers open up, give us metadata, provide us with some operational telemetry that when we first started talking to them, absolutely no way ever would they do. And I think as they realise that consumer experience is vital, and as much as they may not want to admit it, they do need the network operators and they need our distribution and they need our ability to deliver quality service. They will start to open up a little bit more.
I think today it's still seen that operators having that kind of information will prioritize content from one or the other, because due to any catalog gaps that one has in comparison with the other, I think it still seemed like that, so they prefer to keep it closed and not share. But I think there will be, I hope in the future, in the near future, they see advantages of having that content and that metadata exposed in some scale to network providers and service providers that can bring a bit of the best of everyone to the customer. And I think the customer may force that move.
Yeah. I love this topic. This particular topic is one I could carry on talking about for a long time, but unfortunately we are running very low on time. So I think we have a couple of minutes left. I don't know who's in charge here, but 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes. So I want to bring this to a neat close. So I want to get perspectives from each of our panelists here on, in your opinion, what are the variables that are going to either slow or accelerate a boxless world, which is a boxless world, service providers. And sort of related to that, what do you think are going to be the sort of top 3 challenges that service providers are likely to face in the next 3 years? So, Gavin, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, it's a great question. We talk a lot about boxless in our business. And where we always get stuck is to offer the kind of aggregated experience that we want to offer from a search, discoverability, seamless login, billing point of view is really difficult when you don't control the middleware. That's really difficult to do when you don't control the box. So the boxless experience is one where I think there'd have to be a significant change in the landscape of what the OTT players would allow us to do. Because otherwise it's very, very difficult to get people in and out of apps and land them back on your page. So probably the biggest one is the willingness of the OTT and content providers to work with us and open up technically and commercially to enable a boxless world. Because at the minute the boxless experience is just nowhere near as immersive as the box experience. So that's probably the biggest one. And then I think generally as well, operators globally still quite like selling set-top boxes to customers because there's a physical thing that attaches value to a service that they have as a bit of an anchor for the customer. You flip it round the other way though and says, does the customer need it? I think that answer would vary massively generationally. My kids don't even understand the concept of a set-top box, whereas my dad thinks it's the only way you get television. So I think the generational landscape is at play there, but yeah, in simple terms, you just can't offer as good an experience today without control of the middleware, and for that you need a box. So I think the set-top box is going to be around for a while yet.
What do you guys think? Boxless world, is it on the horizon or?
That has been a huge discussion internally.
Externally.
But having the device, having the control of the device, just to give you an example, a counter example from the boxless. So in the last 2 to 3 years, we might have received more than 100 builds from the OEMs for the set-top boxes, because we want to optimize the Wi-Fi, the rendering of the streams, the number of streams that are rendering. So we tried to enhance the experience and to control better the experience and the predictability of the experience on top of that set-top box. We couldn't do that with boxless. That's the big point here is that we could never do that with the boxless for 2 reasons. Because they are not that willing to change for one small customer, because for them we are a small customer, and the big problem is scale. So you need to address a specific middleware to work with it and to stick with it, okay? And to control every detail of it. Even when we change for a new version of that middleware, we still have to do a lot of work before to control that beast that we have new in front of us. And that's the kind of integration that we need to have. And that's why we believe, at least personally I believe, that boxless is not yet there. Okay? It's possible, but from our perspective, and going back to the beginning, to maintain a good quality of service, you need to control or try to control all variables, and the set-top box is one of them, or the device is one of them. You can have a set-top box, you can have a TV, as long as you can control the middleware.
Okay.
Yes, I think from an engineering perspective, set-top box is a comfort. It's like a warm blanket where you know that everything will work as you expect.
My set-top box is something very real. Too warm.
Yes.
You need to cool it down.
Yeah, they're going to become doors, isn't it?
Yeah, and when we start to get out from the set-top box, of course, there are some challenges. Our application will work in the same way in all those devices. Are we going to need to certificate some of those devices? Are we not willing to let our app work in all of our devices? Because if something goes wrong, of course, the customer will call us if something has any problem. So standardization, I think it's actually the main challenge, or the lack of it, for Opus One.
So my final wrap up, and because we have literally a minute left, this is going to be as close to a one-word answer as you can give. Top challenge facing service providers in the next 3 years?
Aggregation.
Aggregation?
Personalization.
Personalization?
Quality data. It's two words, actually.
We'll hyphenate it.
Yeah, the quality, to maintain the quality of experience.
We'll call it experience. Okay. Wonderful. Well, I think that brings us to a close. Thank you very much to my panel. Thank you very much to our wonderful audience. I don't think we have time. Do we have time for questions? No time for questions. All right. Come and find us at the coffee break. You can ask us questions. So thank you.